Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of The Anatomy of a Room, where we pull back the curtain on a beautifully designed room by one of our members and get all of the information on their inspiration and thought process behind how they got there. I am your host, Ann Corgan, a Seattle-based interior designer and co-founder of Anywhere. Anywhere is a platform that's making it easier for designers and vendors to work better together. So, what does that really mean? Well, we want to provide access to the basic information that designers need when specifying certain products, maybe late at night, like pricing and MOQs. And it also allows for discovery of new vendors, manufacturers, and product lines within them. So, it's not just a directory, though. It's a beautifully designed platform that provides inspiration and also enhances the ability for community and connection between designers and vendors alike. So that's part of why we're here today with our amazing guest, Julie Roots, who I'm so excited to dive into and walk through the room that we have on deck. So Julie is a San Francisco Marin-based interior designer who just debuted her dining room at the 46th annual San Francisco Decorator Showcase. And I'm so excited to dive in. Hi.
Hi, Anne. Thanks for having me.
Yes,
Good to see you.
you too. I should also mention that Julie is my former boss and an incredible mentor to me still to this day. So I'm so grateful that you took the time. I know this is a crazy, crazy time with Showcase opening. You are probably living, breathing, doing it all day. So thank you.
Thank you. No, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Julie, I'd love to just kick it off with kind of you walking through really briefly what your aesthetic is and a little bit about your firm and some of your projects. We'll take a peek.
Sure. Okay, I'm Julie Roots, the founder of Julie Roots Interiors. I'm going on 12 plus years, primarily based here in the Bay Area. So we do projects north and in Marin County, San Francisco, down on the peninsula, East Bay, and beyond in Hawaii. And I would say my aesthetic, I love focusing on the architecture and the bones of a home first. And that kind of starts to drive and formulate the design. I really focus on curating designs and projects and executions for clients specifically, how they live, what their vision is for the space, where they are in their life cycle in terms of, getting to the final stage of the design, what the setting is, in the Bay Area, are you on the water? Do you have tree views? And kind of what feeling are you wanting to evoke in your space? So kind of spending a lot of time really getting to know, again, the architecture of the home, the clients, and setting the vision firsthand. And that really then informs the design. I would say I definitely lend myself more to like classic, clean lines, beautiful furnishings, well-made pieces, quality over quantity, and then layering in the space. So layering in, the different kinds of fabrics, mixing metals, and really trying to formulate something that feels very curated and very unique and specific, again, to the homeowner. I do love color and prints and patterns, but some of my clients really love neutrals and layered spaces where we focus more on the lines of the furnishings and the metals and, maybe we're pulling in plaster and more kind of textured types of things.
I love it.
Sorry, it's a long answer.
No, that was great. Well, and it's so fun because I mean, I'm so excited because we are obviously, well, let's just dive into the room. Let's put it up because I think um, it's the dining room in the house, which is so stunning. And I think when we kind of walk through, we'll take it back from the very beginning, which actually was really just January when this all started. So I think that that's always interesting to note. And I think when we kind of see the beginning, it's quite impressive to see like how you got to this final stage.
Yep.
And I have so many questions about showcase rooms, and I will just mention I saw on that intro page that I had the great pleasure of working for you when we did the bathroom at the show house. So I feel like I have this
2019.
2019, I have a sense of kind of all of the stress and excitement
Right.
that can come with it as well. So I'm excited to kind of break it down and get into it. So,
Definitely.
I mean, you touched on something previously. Okay, so there's the before, which I feel like that's such a transformation. So I would love to know, did you specifically want the dining room in this house, or were you considering any other rooms?
Great question. So originally, I had my eyes on the primary suite at the showcase, which included the primary bathroom and the primary bedroom. However, after discussions with Jeff D'Souza, who's on the board, he was really encouraging me to do the dining room. So I definitely had to pivot and shift into this space. And I will say, from where it started architecturally, it had a lot of challenges in my mind. When I look back now at some of the before photos, I get kind of conference room vibes or like a boardroom. It did have this coffered ceiling that the homeowner did not want me to touch. And again, after some discussions with Jeff, it just it wasn't up for consideration. And the room is off of a hallway, which the first floor, including the kitchen, the family room, this space, the office, and the library are basically all off a hallway. So what I loved about this room was it does have kind of this grand entrance, you know, kind of a wider space that you're entering, but with a coffer. And it just architecturally to me did not make any sense to have a coffer. The ceilings are already pretty low in this room. It was very chunky. It was oval. It did have a beautiful silver leaf to it, but it was kind of where I launched with the tenting concept. In tandem with that, it did have a closet that impeded on one of the walls where we have the antique chest. To the left of that is a closet, which also made no sense to me because there's a butler's pantry that has a lot of space and an additional closet. So yeah, as you're entering to the left, you can't see it in this image, but there is a closet on that wall left facing. And then also were these doors and windows, if you will. But they're very dark and heavy. They're definitely a statement. And they go off to a little kind of Juliet balcony, and you look into the side of the neighbor's house.
Mm,
But they're shaded and they really don't provide any natural light. And I struggled with, you know, in the dining room, I think people expected me to paint the coffer or add wallpaper to it and, you know, put draperies in front of these windows and doors. And that was going to be the dining room. And again, as I speak to starting with the architecture of the home and, you know, really important things like millwork and details, this room, I think was lacking
yeah.
the architecture that I think would really be, you know, more of a backdrop for things like a treatment on the ceiling and these beautiful window treatments and so forth. So somehow it popped into my brain that tenting the room was going to be the call. So I started, you know, really kind of finding inspiration on tenting images. I have always loved a tented space. Like Mark Sykes does, beautiful tented spaces. Vera Greeny has done tented spaces. And they're more common, I would say, not common, but you see them more on the East Coast and in the South, in West Palm Beach, and they're not seen as much here on the West Coast. And because the room is long and narrow, but it's the dining room of this beautiful San Francisco 10,000 square foot home, it felt like it really needed to feel more special. And I kind of leaned into the size of it and the scale of it and really tried to make it this feeling and this moment of, you're kind of being transported into a different place when you enter the space.
I love it. Well,
So yeah, the tenting was definitely the pivot.
yes. Well, let's talk a little bit about the inspiration and kind of how you got here because, when you were speaking about your style and how you typically start, you mentioned that you love to design like for that client, their stage of life, what they're experiencing. But obviously, one of the, I think, things that some people love about a showcase room is that there is no client. And then I think for others, that can also be challenging that there is no client because you kind of have to come up with that.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know, I believe you took a trip back in the fall to Morocco, and I imagine that that had a lot to do with your inspiration. So just if you could talk a little bit about how that all translated, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I went on a design trip hosted by the wonderful Grant Gibson, who does amazing trips. It was my second trip with him. And just being in Marrakesh, immersed in their culture and the food, the colors, the tile. We went to several different well-known hotels in the area, and that definitely sparked this inspiration for me for this space. And I did initially always want something that was kind of deeper and moodier. And I was thinking about like a claret color or an aubergine color that you do see in some of those hotels in Marrakesh. So those colors definitely, kind of are where I started as well. So you can see in this image, this is a Vera Greeny image, which definitely we kept going back to. Just as far as like the tiles, I loved this portrait. You have no idea how much time I spent scouring the internet trying to find portrait art. But just this mix of the prints and the colors and the different shapes, and they're all very different, but they all really work together. Marrakesh was absolutely a huge source of inspiration. You can see like here you've got, just the different textures. And I loved this kind of melon palette that you see here on the wall, which I ended up incorporating into the custom bench that was put into the space when you walk in on the right-hand side. But I love this kind of melon touch, with the aubergine alpaca, which by the way, I don't think I mentioned, it is 200 yards of Prima alpaca Sandra Jordan fabric that you're seeing on the ceiling and the walls of the dining room.
That's very important to note.
Very important to note. So yes, that tenting, FYI, requires a lot of fabric. So definitely something to consider when you're thinking through the space as a whole.
And
But
that's
yeah,
in addition to those to the entrance. Those are separate, obviously. So that's like just within the interior is all the alpaca.
exactly. Yes. So the ceiling and the walls are the alpaca fabric. And then when you're entering the space, it's Carolina Irving, this print that I just love the palette of this print. And it was the perfect juxtaposition with the Sandra Jordan. I feel like it kind of brought everything to life. And you can kind of see on the perimeter of this image, we ended up painting the casing as you're coming into the room which again, being in Marrakesh, you're submersed in all these different beautiful tile installations, and the intricacy and the detail is just insane, and it's everywhere. And I couldn't get enough of it. And I had all these pictures that I had taken of these tile installations. So I compiled several scale wise that I felt could work. There you can see, this vanilla casing, and worked with a decorative painter in the Bay Area, Evelina, and came up with this motif. And she came in and did the decorative painting on the casing as you enter. So it's kind of that first peek. If you're coming in from that side, there's two ways to enter the room. But if you're coming in from this brand side, you get that little hint of like what is behind, the draperies here. And that's kind of like your first step into the Moroccan Mirage.
I love
Here
it.
you can see it in process.
Yes.
But I just loved, taking just a really plain surface and bringing it to life and kind of bringing back again the Moroccan inspo of the space.
Wow. I love it. Okay, so just quickly touching now on the floor plan. I mean, obviously, this space is a dining room, so there was going to be a dining table, and we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what those pieces are. But talk to me a little bit about, I mean, you had this surrounding tenting, and then that custom bench. Was that something you knew you wanted to include again from your travels, or how did that come to be?
No. So the way we drew it out originally is on that long wall, I envisioned a case piece, and, started even sourcing case pieces and had a case piece in my presentation board. And I imagined something that was an antique, that was a little more intricate and had a history to it. And when the reality of it is that's a pretty long wall, and the case piece started to feel really heavy and a little bit mundane, and we already had the tenting and the wall treatment, and the bench just seemed like the perfect backdrop to that space. It gave us the height that we needed, because again, we have the tent, which is lowering your ceiling height, and then we have the cornice, which I'll talk about in a minute. So the bench just felt like it filled the space appropriately. And it also, when you look at the room as a whole, I envisioned, a family living here, and I envisioned a collected space over time. So it wasn't just all new furnishings coming in. It was, art from different genres and antiques from different periods. And I envisioned the bench as like when you're finished at the dining table and you still want to carry on your evening and you're talking and hanging out and telling stories or whatnot, that then you go over to the bench and you continue the evening, and you can have your little aperitif, your cocktail, your glass of wine, whatever. And the bench has definitely resonated with people. When they come in, they want to sit there and they take selfies and pictures, and it really has become like a moment in the space.
Well, it's always nice, I
So
think, in a place like this where, naturally you're going to have the dining table, the chairs, like harder surfaces. I feel like it's a great
right.
way to introduce other fabrics, I love the ones you chose.
Yeah, I agree. And it definitely allowed an opportunity to kind of pull in, a palette. The aubergine obviously is, the main color focal point of the space. And then we have the printed rug and, pulling in some of the blues and some of the
Mhm.
melons, and then the cream backdrop. And the bench was just a fun way to kind of showcase some, prints that felt a little more globally inspired, and pulling in, the hint of yellow and the blues. And I feel like, it's a little bit more unexpected. The back of the bench is a Pierre Frey fabric that I loved from the beginning, and was trying to figure out, the best spot for it. It's going to be on the dining chairs, and then ended up being the back of the bench. And they didn't have enough yardage for the Pierre Frey, but that worked out just fine because it allowed me to pull in the melon color on the seat. And that was from Casamance, who collaborated with us. And it's a really beautiful soft velvet, so it's textural.
Mhm.
Um, and then the trim is a Hulas through hewn, and I love it's got a little hints of yellow and a little hints of that melon color as well. So it
So
was kind of like the piece that pulled the
yeah,
palette together.
definitely.
Yeah.
What were you going to say about the cornice? I want to go back to that.
Okay. So the cornice. So, when you're tenting a space, the cornice saved us in so many ways because it allowed us to tuck the draperies on the wall treatment, starts underneath the cornice. But I was in Paris in January. I saw Anne and got to have lunch. But I was at the Victor Hugo Museum, and the cornice details in that museum. I think you guys had one image of it with the draperies that really inspired. There you go. That inspired the cornice detail. And my drapery fabricator, Susan Chastain, who is amazing. I was like, we've been in Paris at Decaloff together for many, many years, but I was like, I want these Parisian style draperies, where they have that fullness to them, and how they drape and hang. And so that was the inspo for the cornice and the draperies. And I do have to give a little huge shout out to I'll just speak very briefly, but the technicality of tenting
Yes.
this room was a lot of detail and a lot of technicalities involved. And we had these two guys from Classic Elegance, Scott and Kevin. And so Sue's like, I don't want to do the tenting. And they're like, we don't do draperies. So I basically, we all worked together with two different fabricators and myself to do the execution of the tenting. But those guys literally by hand, pleat by pleat by pleat, they tented that room. It took them 2 full days, and they made the cornices by hand out of wood. So each wall is a solid piece of wood, and they upholstered the cornices by hand and then added we have this beautiful from Samuel and Sons, this turquoise cording, and they added the cording onto the cornice. So in tandem with that, the cornice allowed us to run LED lights underneath. So we have this beautiful kind of downlight that kind of bounces off on the top of the bench and helps illuminate the walls and the drapery on the walls. That aubergine does absorb a ton of light.
Mm.
I did have a little bit of a panic. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be too dark. Because when you're tenting, you're also covering any recessed cans.
Yeah,
So the LEDs under the cornices just was like a beautiful kind of backlit lighting opportunity that really kind of helps highlight everything in the space in a really nice, beautiful, soft way.
yeah,
So I have a very talented electrician who I think from a technical standpoint, in terms of the lighting, he did a fantastic job.
definitely. It gives like such a warm, glowy feel that I don't think you can
Yeah,
achieve another
it
way.
does. And also, I did, even though they were shaded, those windows, I covered those up, right? So really had to rely on our own lighting installation to really make sure that the space did have the proper
Right.
illumination. So it's still, moody and I don't even know if I would call it like moody might not be the right word, but it just feels very calming and inviting. And the lighting just kind of bounces off around the room.
Very enveloping. Like I imagine
Yes.
it's like, yeah, you just want to be cocooned in there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people really resonate with it. You know, in some of these parties that we're having, a lot of the rooms can be kind of loud and it's, hard to hear and you're trying to talk. And when you come in this room with the acoustics of that alpaca, it's like you can really have conversation and can hear yourself. And it like kind of just immediately has this calming effect to it.
I love that. I hadn't even thought about that. Okay, so diving into some of the like specific, was there one kind of, I mean, I feel like when we look at this image, the chandelier, the Paul Ferrante chandelier is such a spectacular piece, but then the table is so amazing. And then the chairs, like, was there one piece that you really started with, or how did you kind of come up with the scheme?
Yeah, I mean, it it really where I started, and the one thing I knew was the tenting. Um, and then from there, it was trying to find, the right pieces. I would say the chandelier and the dining table came next. The chandelier is from Paul Ferrante through Hewn in San Francisco, and it's called the Derrick. And Paul Ferrante designed it after the headpiece that Bo Derek wore in the movie 10. If any of you have seen it, she comes out of the water and she's wearing this headpiece. And when you know that and you see this picture, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And I just loved, the room not having like a grand light fixture and just something a little more um, it's like understated, but then it's not. It's like jewelry when you look at it close up, the details, it has this alabaster base. It just very early on felt like the perfect light fixture. And Paul Fronte was very generous with us with this piece. And then the table, it felt like it needed something sculptural, but contemporary, yet again, a little bit understated. And again, star vendors. June Ho is the designer of the table, and I've known June and Cliff for years, and they were very generous with this table and using it for showcase. And we customized the top, and it has this kind of like a tree trunk base to it, and it was just like the perfect table with the light fixture. And then I have to speak to the dining chairs quickly. So, Jeff Holt with Hewn is a very close friend of mine. And even though he had a million things going on with his life, he was really like a sounding board for me. And, a lot of these like, no, that's a crazy idea, or no, that's a great idea. But Hewn carries John Lyle's furniture, and John Lyle had these beautiful bronze chairs that ended up being our dining chairs. They're solid bronze. They're very sculptural and beautiful. And the chairs weigh about 70 pounds each, and they air freighted them. They have a bronze facility in Vietnam, and these were prototypes, and they let us use them for showcase. They air freighted them to the Bay Area. And that's a great image. And I worked with Revitalice on the reupholstery of the seat. But they're really showstoppers. I mean, they're insanely heavy, but in the best way. And just the way the light bounces off the finish, and just the sculpture nature with the back. They're like a Klizmos style, but the way the legs are, like, they're just stunning in person.
So
So that was definitely, just like a one of a kind, a chair that you haven't seen. Um, and really they're jewelry. They're so beautiful.
so
And I
pretty.
will talk about the rug. So Mark Nelson is one of our amazing rug vendors. He's out of New York, and he wanted to partner with us for showcase. And again, when you're talking about a custom rug and a custom size and showcase timeline, every day counts. So Mark was amazing working with us. I had given him kind of um, a sense of like this pattern and motif that, I wanted something, originally I thought, oh, I'll do a vintage rug. Again, finding the right rug and the right size and the right palette, in that timeline, was a little bit difficult. So came up with the pattern and the motif, and worked with Mark Nelson's art director, and she scaled it out and did a graphic in the right size and scale, kind of gave us a couple different options in terms of how to scale it out. And then I chose the palms with Mark on each, part of the rug, what color was going to go where. And then I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm like, it's too dark. It's too dark. I need to change the palms. And I sent an email and he's like, oh my gosh, Julie, like we don't have, we need these days. Like, I'm like, he showed up in my office with this ginormous bag of palms and we, rejudged with girls in the office and Mark and myself. And we didn't get a strike off, obviously, because you don't have time. And we're like, we hope it looks okay. We hope we like it. And that rug arrived 2 days before our photo shoot and rolled it out, and it's perfect. And it just literally like brought everything to life in the space.
The scale of it is so good with, and when you see like the center line running through with the coffee table, I mean, it's really,
Yeah.
and to your point, I mean, the timeline of this is crazy. Are you just living with like just this kind of constant like on to the next, on to the next? I mean, it's so, can you just break it down a little bit? Like you said, you started in January.
Yeah. Basically started in January, and I would say I was off to a little bit of a slow start. I was a little bit like not paralyzed, but just a little overwhelmed, maybe is the right word. Like sometimes I just have to like let things kind of work through in my brain before, I can just kind of like, okay, it's starting to come together. I spent a lot of time sourcing the right fabrics. I love pulling palettes and fabrics and prints and pulling everything together. And for this room, I wanted it to feel collected over time and, to have like a bit of a global feel to it. And you really have to have the right prints when you're mixing prints and patterns. And so I did really spend a lot of time trying to get all the prints, the right prints in the right way. So again, the Pierre Frey and the melon seem to be starters, along with the aubergine of Sandra Jordan. Like definitely started with the aubergine, and also really had to honestly pull in like all of my favors to see if Sandra Jordan would collaborate with us. And thankfully she said yes. Um, so the aubergine paired with the Pierre Frey with the melon, I would say, was definitely a starting point. The Carolina Irving print, which ended up being the other side of the drapery upon entry. Once I found that and I landed on it, I was like 100%, that's the one. And then from there, went through with, all the details like the fringe and all the cording details and the prints on the sofa. And pulled in a couple of this pillows are Robert Kime, who I love his textiles. They're UK based. And so those kind of just started to come together. And we'll give a shout out for designers listening. Pillow Punk did our pillows. And if you have not heard of them, check them out on Instagram. They are amazing pillow fabricators, and they are very tech savvy, and they're very easy to work with. And they fabricated our pillows with like Turkish corner details and cords and all the things, and shipped them to us. And they were just a dream to work with. So
I
hats off to
hadn't heard
them.
of them, and I saw that they were a vendor, and I went on, and I
Yeah.
think it said like they ship in like 5 days or something. I mean, it was like very impressive. So I'm very excited.
Yeah. You should,
Uh,
yeah, definitely check them out. They did the bolsters and all the pillows. Um, and then in front of the bench, that is Gary Hutton, that little, it's like a low metal coffee table, and it's so beautiful in person, and the way it reflects light against the tones of the colors in the bench was like the perfect little piece over there. There it is. Love that piece. And then those side tables are Gregorius through Needler Fischer. And the palms, a lot of people ask about the palms. And that's a good image of the rug too, because you can really see the scale and the pattern and the palette and just, again, that center line like you're talking about. So I love palms. In 2019, if you remember, we did that Rosie Lee palm floor lamp, and people still talk about it and remember it. And uh, being in Marrakesh and the palms and, just kind of the climate there. And I just love a good palm tree. So Hune actually, they carry Iatesta Studio and they had these palm to shares in their showroom, and they were too tall. And I worked with my metal worker, Jill Turman in the East Bay, who's amazing. I'm like, I need you to cut these palms down. She's like, oh my gosh, send me a photo. So they ended up cutting them down to size for the room. And we did, again, need height. So they were just like the perfect little addition. They're not little, they're really big. And they're solid zinc. And they do have some sharp corners in them, but I love the way they look with the bench and with the Gregorius side tables.
So good.
Um,
I know.
yeah, so pretty.
Well, I love, we've kind of touched on quite a few of like the products that we love so much in the room, but let's kind of pan to that that we peeked at. I mean, we spoke about the light fixture, those side tables, which are great. That amazing fabric. The torchairs though, the palms, like those are also illuminated, right? Which I, because it looks
Yes,
almost as though the light's coming down, but they also illuminate, which I think is so cool.
yes.
And how are they? Are they like flat on the back or what's
They
how?
are flat on the back and they're mounted. And that's a great question because when you tend to room, it's like,
Right.
how do you hang things? So basically, anything that we needed to hang, we had to attach plywood on the actual walls of the space. And then you kind of feed the back of whatever you're hanging through the fabric into the plywood.
Wow.
So, yeah, the torchairs have a flat back and they're mounted behind the wall treatment. And so they're totally fixed to the space. Um, and that said, we have the mirror that you can see like upon entering. That mirror is an antique from Garden Court Antiques. It's from the 1700s. And the chest, which I think you guys had a great image of the chest on the left facing wall. That's also from Garden Court Antiques, and it is from the 1700s. And the detail on it is, yeah, there's a good shot of it. The detail on it is just so beautiful. It has an inlay detail and kind of a floral motif on the top of it. But again, getting the space to feel, I envisioned a family that was like very chic and sophisticated, kind of Park Avenue meets Marrakesh, if you will. And I just felt like the antiques really helped give you that collected over time sensibility. And really kind of, I to go through kind of the art process, which was the last kind of piece of the room for me. Because again, just sequentially and making sure we had time for things like custom rugs and custom bench and all the things, the art was like, okay, felt like we had a little more time with that. But I was going to do a piece of art, behind the table is like when you come in and there's the art and
Mm.
we had the sconces from Jonathan Browning, and I just pictured the Paul Fronte fixture with a piece of art behind it, but it felt really overpowering for the space. And I wanted it to be pared back, even though it has all this detail. It needed to kind of have like a little more of a subtle under and overtone to it. So instead of doing a big piece of art on that wall, I landed on that gorgeous mirror from Garden Court. And I love that it's a French antique from the 1700s. It's like the fact that it's even around to this day is pretty remarkable. But again, the finish on it and the way the light hits it, and again, the light kind of bounces around the room. It's probably one of my favorite pieces. But
Well, I did want to just mention though too, because I mean, a big part of what Anywhere is all about is, highlighting some of these different vendors and as a designer being able to discover them. And I think that's what's so cool about the showcase is it really is celebrating like that relationship between designer and vendor, whether that's the manufacturer, the showroom, the rep, and it feels like everyone just kind of bands together to like make it happen. Um, and I think I noticed on your website that you have a landing page where people can really, can go and actually shop these items, and see more about, who is involved. And so I just kind of wanted to shout that out because I feel like it's such a great way to highlight it, and really see what these like specific things are. Because I feel like you walk into this space and you're kind of just like, this is so incredible. But as you really look at each specific piece, and they are for sale,
Yeah,
call it out.
they are for sale. Yeah. Um, I think there's maybe one piece of art that, two pieces of art that are from a private collection that aren't for sale, but otherwise everything in the room is for sale. And I'm also just really proud of the room for carrying such a wide range of vendors. And, um, in our industry, your vendor relationships are so important. And when you are doing something like Showcase, those relationships really start to, take come to life in terms of, you have one space and you only need one table, and then there's other designers, and what are they doing and what are they using, and making sure we're all, have unique spaces that don't have anything that's, duplicated in another space. And there's just a lot of factors that come into play. And I was really just so pleased that so many vendors really wanted to step up and, be a part and collaborate, and be a part of the room. And Sandra Jordan came on Saturday and toured the room for the first time, and just seeing her face and how excited she was. And, she told me how proud she was of me. And it just like made me so happy that, to showcase their pieces in a way that they really are so, pleased with is very rewarding as well.
I love it. Great. Well, I think we're going to dive into some Q&A because that's what's so fun about this is that it's not just me who gets to ask you the questions. So let's see what our first question is. Okay, so how did this experience differ from your previous showcase experiences?
That's a great question. At first I was like, oh, I did a bathroom in 2019 when Anne worked with me. And, when you're dealing with like a contractor and tile, and we're putting in new flooring and plumbing and custom vanity and all those things, construction is, a whole different animal when it comes to design, and then layering in the design pieces. So this time I was like, well, we're not doing construction, which was honestly a relief. But then we had the technicality of the tenting and the sequential order of, how that had to get installed. The cornices had to go up before the wall treatments, and, the tenting, so it's like all those things. I think that was the technicality of the tenting was definitely a much different experience than before. I would say that was probably the biggest. And then I feel like this time, I had more bandwidth in terms of my team. Our team is a little bigger than, when we did, 2015, I was, newer on the street. So, I definitely carried, a lot of weight there. And then 2019, had team support, but this time we have a bigger team, and was great to have the JRI team involved. And I think they were just also really excited to be a part of Showcase. It's just a really fun, and just rewarding thing to be a part of. And, it is stressful, but it's also just really exciting to do it. So I really feel like my team completely stepped up, and we're all hands on deck and ready to help, as needed. And showcase is different now than it was when I did it in 2019 in terms of the technology, and the expectations of the social media and the, extra part on your website that's your room and, those things we didn't do before. So I do feel like there was a lot more asked of us behind the scenes in terms of executing from the showcase board standpoint than I was used to in the past.
Interesting. Love it. Okay, so looking back, what design risk in the space do you feel like most paid off?
I think the tenting, I think that was risky. I wasn't sure, had a little like, are people going to get it? Are they going to appreciate it? Are they going to understand it? And I think just the people that walk in, we just had the public opening on Saturday and I worked Saturday and Sunday in the space. And so seeing their faces when they walk in and their reactions has been amazing. Yeah, so that's been super fun for me to experience.
Sorry, I'm like leaning forward, but it's so tiny. Okay,
They're a little
how did
small.
you
I don't even know how you
adapt?
can read this.
How did you adapt your workflow for a showcase project compared to a residential project?
Um, yeah, the workflow is again, it's like every week matters. And I felt like time was going by so fast. Even it's not even when the opening day is, it's we have press day. And then before that, we have to shoot the project because they have to have the images in order to even have your images for press day. So I think the timeline is just really tight. And again, the rug shipped from India, it was made by hand. The bench through Hewn was made in Los Angeles and then had to be brought up here. So, and again, good design, we always say this, like good design takes time. It's a process, and it's also just a process in my brain of how it's going to unfold. And you have to kind of think through these elements and really kind of like churn them out. And then you're under the pressure of having to have it finished and know that you need enough time for the fringe to ship from France and
Right.
go through customs and then get to the workroom to be installed on the bench. So it's all those elements times like a million. And just feeling like, oh my gosh, like every day is like so fast. It's stressful.
And then managing the fact that you have actually, design clients
Oh,
too.
yeah. So I didn't speak to that. Sorry. The workflow, yes. In tandem, we have client presentations, client meetings. We have our team meetings every Monday in the office. So, I would say, in particular, Alex in my office was, kind of my right hand person in boots, on the ground. She lives 10 blocks from Showcase, poor thing. So, it was like, okay, go meet the electrician and, all the things. But, then she's having to shift and adjust, to make sure, that she's still getting her project deliverables done. So I think just like really strong project management and project organization. Alex and Heather worked really closely together. And then, I had the help of Isabel and Erica and then myself. And again, we work really strongly together as a team. So it's just like still doing all the same project things and then squeezing in, all the other things, like even just doing the boards for Showcase, that was all day Saturday, all day Sunday, just um, extra time before and after and on the weekends as well. So
After hours.
after hours, yeah.
Okay. I'm like, what are the subtle details that you think most often get overlooked by, newer, more junior designers? Whether that's in, this specific space or in general, really.
Um, I would just say more from a Showcase experience. It's a lot of time and it's a lot of money. And even things that you may not think about if you're thinking about your budget from the beginning. There's also things like, again, the additional website, support, and the press day cards and more business cards and the ad for the showcase book and all these things. It's like, I don't, I wouldn't expect a newer designer to really know and understand all of the like line item from a budget standpoint. Having done this 4 times now, that's a different learning curve that I have than I had, in 2015 when I started. And I think now I have the leverage of my vendor relationships in a much stronger way than I had when I was a newer designer. So I think, really being able to kind of partner with some of our vendors that, are showrooms and things that we use frequently, whereas when you're newer, you don't have as big of a breadth, I think, of those relationships. But
Yeah.
the budget's a big one, hands down.
Yes. Well, it begs the question, would you ever do a showcase house again?
Well, I will say in 2019, I was so fried. I was like, and we should mention that Anne was about to give birth, right? So, um, after 2019, the end of May, I was like, oh my gosh, I was exhausted, and I'm like, I don't think I'll ever do this again. We'll never say never, because then, and for a few years, definitely, I was like, no way, didn't even consider it, didn't even do a walkthrough. And for some reason this year, I just kind of had this feeling like it was the right time, and I wanted to do it again. And so I say never, but I would say 100% I would do it again. I think it's so rewarding and it's so creatively fulfilling. And I think it's such an exciting moment for your team to get to be a part of it. And again, the public interaction has been so much fun, talking to people going through the space, and being able to do something creative and that still feels so meaningful and special to you and really unique to me as a designer, is I think a very special and unique experience. So I'm still on the showcase high. I don't know. Ask me the end of May. I might have a different answer. But I'd say for now, yes, I would. It's
I,
definitely worth it. And honestly, like also the relationships that you make with the designers in the house of
yeah.
when you're doing showcase, you're like a showcase family. So even from like 2015, those designers that I became, friends with, I am still good friends with to this day. So I think that's too one of just the surprises of showcase that you don't think about when you're applying to do a room, really are like the internal designer relationships from working so closely. You're there all month long a lot and in the evenings, and you're really kind of getting to know designers in a different way than if you weren't doing showcase, which I think is like a huge bonus to being a part of it.
So great. Well, I just cannot thank you enough for walking us through your room. I feel like it's gotten so many amazing accolades and people are so excited about it. So it was just so fun to like walk through the nitty gritty. And, I've been dying to know
Thank you.
all about the tenting and how things are hung and all of it. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was fun to walk through and really kind of deep dive.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Julie, diving into her decorator showcase room. We're looking forward to episode 3, which will be coming up soon. And visit us at anywhere.design to learn more and stay informed about everything coming up. Thanks.